For those of us who have not actually followed the Ghana card story, why should we believe these MPs, these politicians, who never agree, but for once are agreeing and saying Ghana card is what will give us a clean society? First of all, what does that mean, that it will give us a clean society?
Well, I think that the visits by the MPs on both sides of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee and Defense and Interior was an eye-opener, because most of the comments made up in the media on Ghana card, I think, is merely born out of ignorance, because people don't understand the concept of it. And as was articulated by both sides of the House, it was also being politicized sometimes, seen in the political lens that it is for voting. But the Ghana card essentially is not just a card, it's a whole system, a national ID system, and we're able to demonstrate that to them. This system is made up of infrastructure and platforms that are in 18 different segments with leading different kinds of subject experts to run it. And this is integrated into what is the national ID system. The card is only one part of the 18. Right? Now, in order to produce such a card, you need to have very high certifications. And our subsidiary, Intelligent Cards Production Systems, is the most certified factory in the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa, with more than 8 top-level international certifications.
Okay, you take us through, because I understand from my production side that you're going to run us through a few slides to give us a better appreciation of it as background before we begin to ask you a couple of questions. But how many have we captured on the system so far, and how many cards are out? Because that has been a thorny issue.
We've captured in excess of 17.8 million of the population above 15, which constitutes about 85% of the population.
How many of them have cards?
The cards that have cards printed is 17.7 million plus. And cards delivered is short of 640,000 that people are yet to collect.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. So help us to understand you. So we'll ask you a number of questions. People have sent in some of them.
Okay. I mean, you know, the Margins Group will be 34 years on 13 December. And we are incorporated in 1990. We started as a print finishing business and a lamination business. In 95, we changed our focus to identity. And since 95, we introduced laminated IDs, moving from passbooks with pictures and so on. And we've evolved it to what you see today. So that evolution involves going from laminated ID cards to the latest Ghana card. Whilst ID used to be a fiduciary thing, basically looking at the security of a physical document, today it's also digital, and we combine both. So our vision is to connect identities used broadly of both people and things securely to transactions and solutions and products. And the Ghana card is only one of that. So since 1990, our products have been in the pockets of every Ghanaian, whether they know it or not. And we've produced identity systems from the fiduciary old world to the digital world for banks, for government institutions, for corporates and so on, for 34 years. And we've done every event in Ghana, that, you know, from non-aligned movement to the sports events. We produce all the IDs, both the IT and the physical documents. And we produce Ghana passports and laminates since the 90s. And today we organized at the Margins ID Group level. We have a first-class certified factory, as I said, manufacturing secure documents, which can manufacture more than 20 million secure documents a year. And then we have a technology company that builds software and infrastructure that connects these documents to transactions for third parties securely. So that's our 34-year journey. And we didn't arrive here just by chance. You know, it's a long process. And we have lasted this. The Ghana card is only the latest manifestation of what we do.
We understand that what you're doing, as those of us who have participated in appreciate, we simply are coming to a single source of identification. What exactly is that, and what's the benefit in that?
The Ghana card is only one part of the 18. Right? Now, in order to produce identity systems from the fiduciary old world to the digital world for banks, for government institutions, for corporates and so on, for 34 years. And we've done every event in Ghana, that, you know, from non-aligned movement to the sports events. We produce all the IDs, both the IT and the physical documents. So our vision is to connect identities used broadly of both people and things securely to transactions and solutions and products. And the Ghana card is only one of that. So since 1990, our products have been in the pockets of every Ghanaian, whether they know it or not. And we've produced identity systems from the fiduciary old world to the digital world for banks, for government institutions, for corporates and so on, for 34 years. And we've done every event in Ghana, that, you know, from non-aligned movement to the sports events. We produce all the IDs, both the IT and the physical documents. So our vision is to connect identities used broadly of both people Okay, you know, identity is a legal question, and then it's a technical question. You know, so the legal identity of a person is determined by foundational law. In the case of Ghana, citizenship is determined by our constitutions, our various constitutions since independence and prior to independence, the fundamental law. And that fundamental law dictates that if your parents or your grandparents is Ghanaian, then you're a Ghanaian citizen. Ours is not citizenship by where you are born; it's by blood, you know. So even though citizenship is a question, it's a fact, it's also a question of law. So how do you evidence that citizenship? Now, the situation before the Ghana Card project started as far back as 2003, when President Kufuor started this organizing the Ghana Card project and the importance of having this clean society, was to find that single source of truth that will establish once and for all.
Single source of truth.
Which will establish legally through a process that you're who you claim you are. And then take that relevant data from you and create a physical document that you could then use to identify yourself whilst going through transactions in order to remove fake identities, which is really the foundation for all crime. So that's the first principle. But how you do that technically is that different countries are at different stages of identity infrastructure. If you take Northern Europe, for instance, because their records are well kept, they have birth certificates that you can rely on. They have an addressing system that you can rely on. They have school records, medical records, and so on, that these identities are tied to through your life cycle. So they are able to, for instance, adopt what you call a federated identity system, which means that they don't need to create a database from scratch. Using these existing databases, they can consolidate what you call a federated identity system in order to create a unique identity. But it comes to the situation in Ghana, because our records were truncated, you cannot really say whether these silo federated identities can be relied on. So recognizing this problem, all governments over the 5 presidents that I have seen, and I know each of them personally, have noticed that in order to be able to deliver services to citizens efficiently, you need to know who your citizens are and where they are living. But if I go to any of the silo databases, like a passport office, and I give them the information that I'm Samson Ladi, and they give me a passport saying Samson Ladi, even if they take my biometrics, it connects to me, but my legal identity is wrong. Then if these databases are not connected, I'm able to go to SNIT and say I'm Moses Baiden with the same identity, same biometrics. But this time, I'm 24 because I want to increase my pension age. And then I can play for the stylist because I'm 17. So you can imagine that over the years, we've created these silos that have identities that are not reliable and that have duplicates if you put the silos together. So a clean and empowered society should have a process where you can collect legal identity through a verified legal process and then create a database that has all the fields that public sector and private sector entities use to do their work in establishing identity, and then connect that with biometrics so that you can now harmonize this data, foundational database, with these silo databases and remove the duplicates so that we have a clean society where people are who they claim they are. Once you achieve that clean society and database, you're able to then have effective planning and budgeting. Precisely. You know exactly where all your farmers are, you know exactly where all your school children are, what ages they are. So the school feeding program budgets, for instance, will not be bloated. Now, in order to save money, instead of government procuring several parts of this 18 segmented subsystem that I've told about, government, for instance, buys data capture equipment for passports, buys transmission equipment, buys biometric systems, and that's same for SNIT, that's same for all the other silos, DVL and so on. If you calculate the cost, and this is empirical, we've done the research, over 10 years, government spends $1.5 billion on these silo databases. So imagine removing all the silo databases and building one foundational database that feeds the silos in real time. with real-time, relevant, up-to-date modern technology. Then you eliminate the 1.5 billion. And if you today go to DVLA, for instance, and you want to register your car, they don't have to ask your name. I'm saying today, I'm not saying maybe. Mm-hmm. All you need to do is to give them your national ID number. They can do a one-to-one verification. Your data goes from NIA to DVLA in under a second and populates their data enrollment system. Then they add the vehicle-centric data. So you can't have a false name tied to a false vehicle. It's automatic. It's being fed by NIA. DVLA does not need to buy all these expensive segments. And so it goes for all the other institutions that silo databases. So you will be who you claim you are, and corruption will be reduced because when people do transactions, we know that they're who they are. If I buy 10 cars, GRA knows that I bought $1 million worth of cars. And my tax is only $100. It can't be. It provides the basis for people being honest and clean and objective. And it provides the basis for a data-driven decision-making process for the whole society, both public and private.
Okay. A question popped up. All these tens of thousands, hundreds really, that you find are faking the identity around and are harmful to us getting a clean society. How do you come by that? How are we sure that it is actually the fact that 45,000 people are using driver's license or passports that ought not be in the system?
Okay, it's in the conceptualization and the design of the system. First of all, the system follows the law. Then it follows the best technology. And then the objectives of the design is to harmonize data so that people are who they claim they are, and they exist only once in the database. So you mentioned at birth. Our job is to assist the NIA, which has the mandate, to implement what its acts envisage, Act 750 and Act 995, and to also enforce LI 2111, Section 7, which Parliament's subsidiary legislation has passed. So that objective in NIA's law is to create a reliable, credible register, accurate register, and to preserve the privacy of this register and the confidentiality. That is the mandate of NIA. Okay, so in designing the data capture system, we put in all the fields that these silo data already collect because we knew we had to match them. Then we collect the biometrics, face, fingerprints, and eyes. Then we did duplicate in real time. When we're actually in the field, in every village that you saw, we trained over 80,000 people to do this registration cumulatively. Whilst they are doing that in the whole of Ghana, in a single day, we did up to 250,000 registrations. We're comparing in real time this data to the data that already exists in the database and making sure that there are no duplicates and everybody has a unique number. So by the time we're done with the database, we understand that everybody in the NIA database exists only once. As Doctor mentioned, they have a unique number on the register tied to their biometrics. Then we connected all these silos in real time to the NIA database after we had received the data and the information that they had presented. Every single card, every piece of paper, every proof of identity that you presented at the registration is scanned and attached to your record and can be accessed in real time. So when we connected SNIT, for instance, because SNIT has fingerprints, we run the SNIT database against the NIA database in order to be sure that all the identities in there are secure and they are unique. And that's how you come with a multiple. So I take Samson, your number, I ran against the SNIT database with your fingerprints. And I found that all of a sudden, you, Samson, you appear as Moses Baiden as well. Or that you have two SNIT numbers. So because we run against a unique foundational database, we'll get the duplicates. And then we inform SNIT and NIA, because the NIA is actually the mandate holder. They are the mandate holders. We are just technical partners of NIA. So the executive secretary of NIA and the governing board, they make the decisions and say, okay, managers, let's look at this presentation of the data. We work with NIA technical parties and they say, okay, this is against the law. Let's inform SNIT. And SNIT will say, oh, this means our pensioners messed up. People are there with the wrong names, they've changed their names. How do we clean up? Then they clean it up. The cleaning up is a legal and policy issue. And rests with the Minister of NIA, which today is Interior, the Executive Secretary of NIA, Professor Tefa, who's doing a fantastic job, by the way, and the Governing Board, which is doing a fantastic job. So they would then direct, together with the institution involved, what does the law say? How do we investigate these? What happens? That we're not part of. We just keep that. So you take passports, for instance. There's a passport database, but there's no deduplication going on. And these passports, you don't know whether the passport is fake or because there's no real-time online biometric verification. So today, when you register for passport, the process is that you're supposed to use your Ghana card. As soon as we got your Ghana card details, we send it to passport immediately. And we verify against their database. And they return saying that, we know Moses Baiden has this passport number and that passport number. So if it does not exist, we flag it. There are various instances of duplication. One is that the passport doesn't exist at all. So the question is this a fake passport? Or is this something to do with the passport's own system? That the database is lost or we don't know. We give it to NIA and say, hey, Moses Baiden presented this passport when he registered. It doesn't exist. Passport has not been
so now, as a result of this process,
yes,
if you were holding that passport that doesn't exist in the system, that does not correspond or communicate with your Ghana card,
yes,
you can use that.
So that's a policy and legal decision. So you have to first investigate. Just use my legal background.
This is the same thing you have done with
for every single
for the Electoral Commission.
Everybody.
And they are talking about how their system is better cleaned up.
Everybody. We found, I think, in the Electoral Commission when they registered with the Ghana card in 2019, and then they said, we want to check all these Ghana cards with these fingerprints. Who did they belong to? These are their voter's ID number. And then you find out, okay, Samson's using voter ID card 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But so is Doctor. But Samson is the Takrady and Doctor is in Bogota. How come they have the same national ID number? We can compare both the alphanumeric information, that this number appears multiple times.
Okay.
And that this fingerprint appears multiple times. And that this person who registered as 18 in the national ID database is actually 21 in the voter's ID. So this harmonization, and so that, this is the first time I'm doing this on the press because we're there to do the work, not to be in media, but it's become necessary to explain. The question, for instance, of the voter's ID, it's not a question of guarantors. It's a question of harmonization. Because if you exist in a silo, I can go and tell EC that I'm 18, maybe I'm 15. But you're not comparing my data to any foundational database in real time. So when it's time to vote, I vote, no matter what guarantor I use. So it is not a guarantor issue. It's a harmonization issue. As doctors pointed out, if you harmonize a unique number, foundational, which is biometric, and that has a legal process, even if somebody else going to steal in the legal process, you'll find out in the end.
Okay, I'll go to this one, but I need you to, maybe a question of cost also, but is it possible that someone could have a Ghana card which is also fake? And what do they do with that?
It is not possible to have a genuine Ghana card that's fake. It is possible to, for instance, theoretically, break into an NIA office, steal a Ghana card, take a printer, print some fake information on it, find a laminate or bribe somebody to get a laminate, put it on it, and it will look like a Ghana card, but it's fake. Because if we verify it, we'll find out it doesn't exist.
If the bank asks you for your card and you give it to them?
Because on your Ghana card are your 10 fingerprints and your face. And we can compare live in seconds, your live fingerprints to the card. Whether there's in a completely offline situation, where you're not connected to anything. Doctor said he believed in the number, not the card per se.
Right.
But the reason why the card is so important as well as the register is that whether you're online or offline, assuming you don't have a connection, I can compare your fingerprints to the card in real time.
Right. So
and we'll find out it's fake.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Over 85%, you said, of undocumented adult Ghanaians are now registered. At what cost to us? Do I pay for the card? How do I get it?
All successive governments have agreed or come to the conclusion that in order to have everybody included and to have this financial database that will build a clean society, the first card should be free.
First card.
Should be free. So that everybody, rich or poor, will have access to a legal identity as a Ghanaian. So the record of their life isn't official. So that they can use that identity to access government services, commercial services, and financial services, especially in this digital age, digitally, remotely, so that people can get services without having to bribe anybody, without the corruption, and this will then. So this cost is what government has decided to bear. In the case of our relationship with NIA, this cost is borne by the private sector. And this is where the misunderstanding is. Government is not financing this. This is being financed by us.
Say that again.
Government is not the one financing the national ID, at least not the initial financing. We are financing the entire technical system. And NIA is financing the operations. But in this system, we build the system, government tests it. If it doesn't work as it is, they don't have to pay. So right from the central systems that government bought so that they own the data, to the cards that's in everybody's pocket, is actually pre-financed by us. And we don't get paid if it doesn't work. And our payment formula, irrespective of whatever ignorant statements are.
Sorry, you are in business to make profit.
Of course.
So how do you make profit?
The profit is contracted. It's contractual. You know, we invested up to 169 million initially in the Ghana card project. Now, we get paid on our debts and our equity, guaranteed. And we give government the famous 1.2 billion model so that government can then charge services to different parties.
Okay.
The money does not come to us. The money is fees and charges passed by Parliament. It goes to an escrow agent, and government guarantees to pay us our 10% of the debt we've raised and 70% of the equity. That's as simple as that. And then
that is
it pays
fixed by law.
It's in the contract that's available to all parliamentary members.
Right. Let me